Hi everyone. This video is going to be a little different. I decided to read y'all a story, and the reason I want to read y'all a story is because, well, stories. My internet is down, so I figured that I would give y'all guys a video right now. It's in the middle of the day. I'm in front of my dresser, and as y'all can tell, all my clothes are out. I got really lazy, so I didn't put up any of my clothes. I've been real busy. So in order to put y'all asleep, or in this case, not put y'all to sleep, I'm gonna read y'all some scary stories. This is called Creepy Creatures and Other Cucuys, which is Spanish for monster. This is by Javier Garza. And I stole this book from my high school. If I've ever been guilty of committing a crime, it's that I had a habit of stealing books because I had an atrocious library fine for 4 books my freshman year. I turned them all in by my senior year because if I didn't turn them in, I was gonna graduate. But there were books there at the time during my sophomore and junior year that I wanted to get, but I couldn't get because I had a fine and I didn't want to pay it, so I would steal books, and this is one of the books that I stole. But I mean, it's their fault because they don't keep track of their books very well, since nobody really checks out books from our library anymore. I just guess it's fine. I mean, this is their fault because when I was taking my end of course exam, one of my high school years, they gave us books without writing down our names, like, oh, who got this book? So it's their own fault. They weren't keeping tracks of books very well. Okay, so Creepy Creatures and Other Cucuys by Javier Garza, and this is a collection of scary stories, Mexican folklore. All of these stories are very popular in Hispanic culture. If y'all guys hear a voice outside, because this is my window right here, we have a technician here who's looking at our internet and our cable. So a spooky collection of traditional tales of the supernatural. Have you ever been too scared to sleep with the lights off? Were you frightened by scratching sounds inside of your walls, or the beady red eyes and naughty green fingers of a duende? In his first collection of scary stories, Javier Garza asked these questions. Now, the author Javier Garza is from where I'm from, actually. He was born and raised in the Rio Grande Valley. Javier Garza is a prolific author, artist, and storyteller whose work focuses primarily on his experiences growing up in the small border town of Rio Grande City, not too far from where I live. Graduating from UT Pan American in 1994 with a bachelor's in fine arts in art, Garza has exhibited his arts and performed his stories in venues throughout Texas, Arizona, and the state of Washington. Garza and his wife live in San Antonio. for most of y'all that know, I live in Texas, and where this guy was born is where I'm from. So yeah. Also, the college that he went to, UT Pan American, which is part of the UT branch with UT Austin. Different school though. Is the same school that my mom went to, and she graduated with this guy. But she would have graduated with him, but she dropped out because she had me. So yeah. Okay. Now, you can see there's not a lot of stories here. Maybe I'll do. Let's see. There's all these. Let me see what I get here. Okay. Now, first one is it basically explaining what a cuckoo is? Which, look, there's some really awesome sketches here. What is a cuckoo? Have you ever been too scared to sleep with the lights off? Or have you mistaken the blowing wind for a woman crying? Did your parents ever tell you that if you were not a good boy or girl, El Cucuy was going to come and get you? El Cucuy was for those who may not know. El Cucuy, for those who may not know, is one of the many words used to describe the supernatural beings that adults call on to scare their children into being good. La Llorona, los duendes, el chupacabras, and the devil, Diablo, are a few of the dozens of scary beings who appear in these popular tales. These stories tend to have a moral to them, often warning children of the misfortune that will come their way should they disobey their parents or be disrespectful to them in any way. Cucuys, however, are not only to be found in Latino culture. Oh no, you can rest assured that every culture has their own cucuy stories. Some may call them myths, legends, or downright superstitious nonsense. But in every culture, there are individuals who claim these stories to be true. Duendes. This is a duende. Orphaned since birth. Elias San Miguel and Julian Maldonado had spent most of their lives living at the St. Carol's Home for Boys. Having met 3 years earlier, the two 11-year-olds had become as close as brothers. So close that one was seldom seen without the other. The two boys were always ready to lend a helping hand to grown-ups or share their toys with other children. Yet, one day, Elias began to notice that Julian's attitude about being nice to other people had begun to change. Julian was becoming less friendly and had even begun to get into fights with the other boys. As disturbing as his friend's sudden change of behavior was, it was not as bizarre the fact that several times Elias had walked in on his troubled friend as he was talking to himself. One day, Elias decided to confront Julian and ask him what was going on with him. "Who are you talking to anyway?" Elias asked Julian, whom he found staring blankly at the wall in I'm talking to my new friend, Julian replied coldly. New friend? Asked Elias, puzzled by his friend's answer. The wall was Julian's new friend? Elias wondered. But it's just a wall, said Elias. No, corrected Julian. It's my special friend's home. Julian's words troubled Elias, for they reminded him of the stories that Sister Marie, an old nun who had once worked at the home for boys, had told him. She had warned him that children, especially those with no parents, had to be very vigilant to avoid coming under the bad influence of a duende. A duende? Elias had asked her, never having heard the word before. Sister Marie explained that a duende was an evil troll that most parents wrongly mistook for their child's imaginary friend. If you see a boy or a girl talking to themselves, Sister Maria had warned, it could be that a duende is on the prowl and is trying to lure the children into doing evil deeds. Sister Maria explained that duendes had existed for years and had always operated in secrecy from adults who seldom saw these small, green-skinned and red-eyed beings. She warned that they would always seek out the most neglected of all children, tricking them into committing unspeakable acts that would get them in trouble. Elias had seen no green skin or red-eyed little beings lurking about, so he dismissed Sister Maria's stories. Julian, however, still showed all the signs of being a child under the influence of a duende. His behavior was erratic and rebellious, and he was constantly lying or using foul language, something he had never done before. Julian's change of behavior had begun shortly after a family from Loreto adopted little Jessie Herrera, only 2 months after being placed at the orphanage. Julian had felt that it was unfair for Jessie to find a family so soon after arriving, especially when Julian had been at the orphanage for years without being chosen for adoption. As he watched Julian stare blankly at a wall, Elias had to wonder if perhaps his friend had lost all his marbles. As he watched Julian stare blankly at a wall, Elias had to wonder if perhaps his friend had lost all his marbles. Oops, I said that line again. It's just a wall, said Elias. I don't see anybody. Look closer, said Julian, gesturing for Elias to move closer to the wall. Elias took 2 steps closer to the empty wall, but still saw nothing. Closer, said Julian, his voice filled with a soft but cackling laughter. Elias placed his nose mere inches from the wall. I still see nothing, he began saying, but stopped after noticing a small hole the size of a pinprick in the wall. Look into the hole, instructed Julian. Look into the hole. It was then that a pair of green hands reached out through the wall and grabbed Elias by the head. Elias tried to scream, but lost his voice when he saw a green-faced with glowing red eyes staring back at him. Julian! Elias began to cry out, asking his friend for help. Julian just stared at Elias, a cold and malevolent look frozen in his eyes. It was then, in the blink of an eye, that Elias was sucked into the hole in the wall that was the size of a pinprick. It seems Julian had been under the influence of a duende, and he became a duende himself, to be literally transformed into He wanted to become a duende himself, to be literally transformed into a green-skinned and red-eyed monster who would prey on other children. So young Julian had sacrificed Elias to the creature to prove that he had the cruelty and evilness to become a duende himself. After all, you have to be pretty evil to sacrifice your best friend to a duende. Julian disappeared from the orphanage that same day, and he was never seen again. Another duende story. Juanito Morin had been an only child for 9 years, and he liked it that way. As the only child of the family, he was the center of attention to both his father and mother, who were always showering him with gifts and special treats. Juanito, however, began to question if the special treatment from his parents would continue after the birth of his baby sister, Teresita. At first, Juanito had been thrilled at the prospect of being an older brother, but the more he thought about it, the less he liked it. Juanito's worst fears were proven to be true shortly after the arrival of his baby sister. Everyone would always make a fuss over how pretty little Teresita was. "She's so beautiful," commented all the relatives. "Beautiful?" questioned Juanito. "How could anybody ever think that a baby as ugly as little Teresita could be beautiful?" The baby whose face he saw in the jars of baby food that his mother bought, with its rounded pink cheeks and bright oval-shaped eyes, was a pretty baby. Its skin was not all wrinkled like a prune the way Teresita's was. What was even worse, all Teresita ever seemed to do was cry and poop in her diaper, and Juanito was none too excited about having to take his little sister's personal business to the garbage can outside the house. It was during one of these trips that Juanito began to hear voices talking in his head. "She's ruining everything," the voices would declare. "Things were so much better before she came along. I bet your parents don't even love you anymore. They love little Teresita now." The boy was heartbroken at what the voices were telling him. Did his parents truly not love him anymore? Had little Teresita replaced him in her heart? Juanito began to hate his little sister, and he took advantage of every opportunity he got to be mean to her. The voices kept urging him on. "Go ahead, do it. Steal and hide all her toys," they encouraged. One day, they asked him to do the unthinkable. "We can make her go away, you know," the voices explained. "We can get rid of little Teresita for you. With her gone, you will once again be your mother and father's favorite." Juanito listened attentively to every word the voices said. "All you have to do is say yes," the voices declared. "Say yes, and you can consider it done." Juanito took a big, deep breath, then uttered, "Yes." Juanito then heard his mother scream from inside the baby's room. When he ran to see what was happening, Juanito saw his mother was on the floor crying and that his father was banging his fist on the wall. "Duendes," his mother cried out. "Duendes with green skin and glowing red eyes came up from the walls and took your baby's sister." 10 years later, a 19-year-old named Juanito is awakened from his sleep by sudden scratching sounds on the wall. "Who's there?" he asks, but he is only greeted by silence. Closing his eyes, the young man goes back to sleep, but is soon awakened by the scratching noises, this time on the floor. "What's going on here?" he cries out as he turns on the lamp next to his bed. When light fills the room, Juanito sees that it is empty except for himself. Going back to sleep, he is awakened yet a third time by the soft murmur of a child's voice. "Juanito, are you awake?" the voice asks. Juanito, very much startled, jumps out of his bed, surrounded by the darkness of his room. Juanito sees what appears to be the black silhouette of a small child standing on his bed. Quickly turning on the lamp next to his bed, Juanito sees a short, green-skinned, and red-eyed girl in pigtails staring back at him. "What are you?" he cries out, very afraid. But the green-skinned and red-eyed girl only stares at him and smiles. "It took me a while to find you, but I never stopped looking. I knew that I would find you someday," says the girl. "It's me, Juanito, your baby sister Teresita. You know, the one you gave away to the duendes? Look at what they did to me. Look at what they did to me." Terrified, Juanito can only stare at his sister, who has become a duende. "But now that I find you, big brother," she replies, showing him her talon-like claws. "Now that I found you, I intend to play with you." Juanito screams in terror and is never seen again. This is a picture. Moral of the story is, karma's a bitch. Okay. This one's called the Lechuza Lady. A little fun fact. I could not watch the movie The Fourth Kind because it involved owls. When I was a kid, my parents would scare me with this exact story. This is actually how they got me to go to bed early at night. But because me and my brother grew up on these stories, we could never watch The Fourth Kind, even though I saw bits and parts of it. It wasn't the alien part that scared me, it was the owl part. I'll tell you why. The story of Lechuza Lady. The story of the Lechuza Lady is nothing but a bunch of lies, declared Don Fidencio, who was not convinced by his wife's argument that he should not go out drinking that night. "The story is true," responded Don Fidencio's wife Cristina, "and I pray that you never have to find out just how true it is." Don Fidencio laughed out loud and told her not to wait up for him. Moments later, he made his way out of the house and began his walk down the half-mile of winding dirt road that led to El Rincón del Diablo bar. Don Fidencio had heard many stories of lechuza ladies. He knew all too well of the woman who had become a large white owl in order to avenge the death of her son at the hands of a drunken driver. After learning of her son's death, it was said that the woman had cursed the infamous bard-stricken El Rincón del Diablo existed. She had taken to preying on its trunks to avenge her son's death. Don Fidencio considered these stories to be pure nonsense. Besides, It would take a lot more than an overgrown bird to scare him away. That night, Don Fidencio drank even more than usual, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, when the bar closed down, he began to walk home, weaving from side to side. Don Fidencio struggled to stay on the path of the winding dirt road that would lead him back to his house. As he turned on a corner, he heard the sound of a voice calling out to him in the wind. "Borracho!" the voice declared, calling Don Fidencio drunk. "What?" questioned Don Fidencio, who looked around, but saw no one. "Borracho!" the voice declared once again, but Don Fidencio still saw no one. Don Fidencio was beginning to get scared now. He could even feel the hairs on his back of his neck begin to rise up. He tried to walk as fast as he possibly could, but he was so drunk that the faster he tried to walk, the more he stumbled and fell to the ground. "Borracho!" the voice called out to him one more time. That is when a giant white owl sprung from one of the trees and attacked Don Fidencio. "Borracho! Borracho!" the lechuza cried out as its talons tore onto his face, and he struggled with a feathered fury. Falling down to the ground, Don Fidencio began to crawl on all fours like a scolded dog in an attempt to get away from the attacking bird. All this time, he kept hearing the lechuza cry out, "Borracho! Borracho!" Don Fidencio finally made it home, and when he turned around to look back, he saw that the lechuza was gone. In its place was a white-haired woman, pointing an accusing finger at him. She cried out, "Borracho!" before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Don Fidencio never drank again. Sorry, I have to clean my glasses. For those of y'all guys that don't speak Spanish, borracho means drunk in Spanish. So for anybody out there who doesn't speak Spanish or doesn't know any Spanish, if you want to call your husband a drunk without him knowing it, call him a borracho. I want to read you that one. This one's my favorite. La Llorona, or the crying woman. This one scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. It doesn't scare me now, but the lechuza one does. There was once a beautiful but very poor Mexican girl named Cristina who fell in love with a handsome young man named Hector Ortega. He was the son of a wealthy caballero, cowboy, who owned the lands where the girl's family grew its crops. The handsome but cruel young man played with young Cristina's feelings, promising to marry her she would give her love to him. This was a promise that the son of the wealthy landowner had never planned on keeping. The man that Cristina believed would be her one true love soon abandoned her, choosing to marry instead a woman he considered to be more fitting to his social status. The only two things that he would leave Cristina would be the two twin boys she'd given birth to during their passionate love affair. Perhaps as a punishment from God for the way he had treated Cristina, the woman that Hector had taken as his bride proved to be barren and would be unable to give him a son to continue his family name. Just as he was about to reach the point of despair, The young man remembered the 2 boys he had fathered with Christina. The cruel young man told Miss Christina that he realized what a horrible mistake he had made and promised that he would divorce the woman he had married and take Christina as his bride instead. Hector, however, had no intention of divorcing his wife or marrying Christina. Christina became suspicious of him when he insisted that he take the 2 boys first and then return for her later that evening. Christina ran out of the house, carrying her 2 boys with her. The young man gave chase and cornered Christina near the river that ran close to her house. The river was running fast that day, overflowing its banks from the recent rains. Left with nowhere to run, Christina began to back herself into the river with the 2 boys held tightly to her chest. The young man followed her into the water and got closer and closer with each step. Christina suddenly lost her footing and fell into the raging water, whose current carried her and her boys away, drowning all 3. The story of Christina, however, was not to end there. The woman was so distraught over the death of her children that her soul could not rest. A few moments after seeing Christina and his sons drowned by the current, Hector saw a white silhouette rise inches above the water and begin to walk towards him. "Where are my children?" the ghostly apparition asked. Hector became so frightened by what he saw that he died on the spot, the victim of a sudden heart attack induced by fear. Now, years later, it is said that the spirit of Christina is still searching for her children. The stories tell that if you listen at night, you can hear her cries of lament in the howling wind. This is why people call her La Llorona, which in Spanish means the crying woman. Each evening, she wanders along the rivers and streams crying, "Ay, mis hijos, oh my children," pleading with the dark waters. I'll keep reading until I get to an hour. And the stories that I didn't read, I'll read on a part 2 video if y'all want. Because there's another La Llorona story there, but I'm gonna save it. And it's long too. Okay, this one's good, but it's also sad. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. Driving his Chevy truck down Old Highway 83 on the way to a night of dancing and fun at El Poscasio's nightclub, Eduardo Garcia noticed that a young girl dressed in a white party dress was standing alongside the road. Now, Eduardo was not in the habit of picking up hitchhikers, but being the good Samaritan that he was, he decided to stop and see if the girl was in need of help. For all he knew, the girl's car might have broken down. "I need some help," Eduardo called out as he pulled up next to the young lady. "Can I help or offer you a ride or something?" he asked. "Why, yes. Oh, no. By any chance, are you going to the dance?" the girl asked. "Why, yes," and related Eduardo. "Do you want to go with me?" he asked. "I'm an okay dancer and I have no tape." The young girl smiled and then nodded her head in a gesture of yes. At the dance, Eduardo had the best time of his life dancing with the young beauty whose name was Cecilia Cantu. He could not believe how lucky he was to have found her. Driving back home after the dance, the girl told Eduardo that she had gone to the dance against her father's wishes. Her father, she said, had felt that she was far too young to be going to dances on her own, and he was too tired from working all day to be her chaperone. The girl, however, said that she had felt an urge to be at the dance tonight. She could feel it in her heart that if she did not go, she would never meet the one true love of her life. I felt the same way, said Eduardo. I rarely go to dances because, as I'm sure you noticed, I have 2 left feet when it comes to rhythm. But something told me that I just had to go tonight. I knew that if I didn't go, I would regret it forever. The minute I laid my eyes on you, Cecilia, I knew I had found the one true love of my life. Those words having been said, Eduardo and the girl kissed. Later that night, Eduardo dropped her off at the exact same spot he had found her. I'll be fine, the girl said to Llorona, who was hesitant to drop her off on the side of the road. I live 1 block down on the other side of the train tracks at a pink house. The only pink house on the whole block. She told him, besides, your car's headlights might wake up my father, and if that happens, then we will both be in real trouble. Well, here, take my coat. It will keep you warm, said Eduardo, noticing for the first time just how cold the night had suddenly gotten. As he placed his coat on her shoulders, Eduardo kissed Cecilia goodnight. She in turn told Eduardo that she would love him forever. She walked away and disappeared in the shadows. What do you mean she is dead? Questioned Eduardo, whose joy at his newfound love had suddenly been cut short. He had shown up the very next day at Cecilia's home to pick up his coat, only to be told that the girl he had fallen in love with the night before had been dead for over 5 years. She was killed 5 years ago, the girl's father said. She had really wanted to go to a dance at Bocasio's nightclub, but I was too tired to take her. Then I went to sleep that night. She climbed out a window and made her way to Old Highway 83 in hopes of catching a ride to the nightclub. A drunken driver ran her down, he explained. She might have lived had she been taken to a hospital right away. But the driver that hit her didn't even stop and call for help. Eduardo Garcia, who was shocked by the man's revelation, refused to believe his story. Then the old man took him to the cemetery where his daughter was buried. It was there that Eduardo found his coat neatly folded on top of Cecilia's tombstone. Inside his coat pocket was a note that read, Eduardo, I will always love you, Cecilia. Eduardo had fallen in love with the ghost. To this very day, it is said that Eduardo Garcia parks his car by Old Highway 83 in hopes of reuniting with his one true love. Guess I'll end this with the haunted train tracks of San Antonio. And this is actually true because I tried this out. So there's a ghost story I believe in. It's this one. The haunted train tracks of San Antonio. It was during a storm about 30 years ago, maybe about 50 now, when a school bus driver was running way behind schedule. He came across the old train tracks that run near the Missions District in the city of San Antonio. He was in such a hurry to finish his route and get rid of all the noisy kids he was taking home that he chose to speed across the old train tracks without first coming to a complete stop. Had he stopped, he might have seen that a speeding train was only a few feet away. Before the startled bus driver could react, the train plowed into the bus, killing the driver and every child on board. The news of the tragic accident swept across the old neighborhood. Seemingly, every family that lived there had lost a son or a daughter that day. 1 year later, an old man's car stalled on the same train tracks. The old man had started to gripe and complain about having to get out of his car and push when he heard the alarm sound of an oncoming train. "Dios mío!" the old man cried out as he saw a rapidly advancing train heading right for him. He quickly turned the key in ignition, but the car still would not start. The old man then gripped the car's door handle, but it too would not turn or open. "I knew I should have fixed it," the old man cried out and began struggling to climb out of his seat and exit through the passenger door. When he realized that he was not going to make it, the old man began hollering out in fear and closed his eyes as he waited for the impact that would definitely kill him. That is when his car suddenly began to jerk forward and roll off the tracks. It was as if some invisible force had actually pushed the car up and over the train tracks. As the old man's car rolled down the hill, it narrowly avoided being hit by the speeding train that flew by with less than an inch to spare. The old man stumbled out from the passenger's door, fell to the ground, gasping for air. What had just happened, he wondered. What had pushed his car off the train tracks? Then the answer came to him, for standing on the train tracks, he saw more than a dozen children. Children who seemed to disappear in the blink of an eye. "It's the ghost of the children," he declared the old man to the local folks when explaining what happened. "It's the ghost of the children who saved my life," he assured the crowd that had gathered to listen to the story. "They didn't want me to suffer their same tragic fate." Nobody in the neighborhood believed him, of course. They all felt that the old man had just gotten lucky. They assured him that there had to be a rational explanation for what had happened. The old man, however, did not agree. "If there is a rational explanation, I sure would like to hear it, especially when it comes to explaining how thieves got here," he declared, and then pointed to his car's rear bumper. The crowd quickly gathered around the vehicle, their eyes opening wide with a combination of awe and horror. The car's rear bumper was covered with dozens of children's handprints. The handprints of the children who had died a year earlier. This is I'm just gonna end it there. I personally believe that story because as a joke, when Warped Tour was in San Antonio, my friends and I, we decided to test it out. The actual myth that if you put baking powder on the bumper or the back of any car, that you'll see the handprints. So my friends and I, we went to the train tracks, and we know exactly what train tracks that it was, because you'll notice prior to the street after, or the streets before and after, you'll see the street signs. They'll say, I don't know, Arturo Avenue, Priscilla Street. Those are some of the names of the streets that you'll see before and after. So regardless if you cross the train tracks or if you're just before the train tracks, you'll see the signs of like the freaking names, right? So my friends and I were brave and it's like, oh, let's go try it out, blah blah blah, right? So we did an experiment. We literally parked our car on the train track, and before we parked, we got out, we covered all the back of the car and all the side of it, covered it in baby powder. And in the car, we decided to take pictures if anything did happen. So we were taking pictures anyway. We were taking selfies and all that. We kept the car in neutral before, so put it in neutral, and then we went over train tracks. And we actually felt the push of the car actually being pushed forward. So the whole time me and my friends were taking selfies like, oh man, we'll catch a ghost on camera. And I didn't, but my friend Anjanette did. It was all four of us. Actually no, it was six of us. Six, yeah. It was three in the front, three of us in the back, or 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There were 7 of us because it was an SUV. And we were taking pictures, and on one of my friend's pictures, Anjanette, she noticed something behind us, because it was the 2 in the front, and there was 3 of us in the middle. And, you know, we all got together, and we noticed that there was, like, a black shadow literally in the car. Yeah. Okay. So, that's it for now. I will, I'll upload this soon. I hope y'all guys liked it as much as I do. I do enjoy ghost stories, and I even more enjoy ghost stories that are related to my culture. Good night, everyone.